Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Newman. I'm the Manager of Planning with the City of White Rock, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's digital public information meeting. I wanted to start out by saying thank you for giving us some of your time tonight to learn more about this project. I'm going to start with just an overview of the proposal, and then I'll turn it over to the applicant and the consultant team to provide you with a breakdown of the project. So this is a zoning bylaw amendment and a major development permit at 14937 Thrift Avenue, 1441, 1443 to 45, and 1465 Vidal Street. The purpose of the meeting tonight is to really raise awareness about the project, to receive your comments and questions, and to give some time to answering those questions and to better understanding the interests of the community. It is a live event. It's being presented largely by the applicants and their consultant teams. So the applicant is Weststone Group, and the project architect is Keystone Architects. We also have representatives from the landscape architecture team and the Binney & Associates, which is the transportation consultant. The meeting is being recorded, and we will post a copy of the recorded meeting to the city's webpage. So if you do know of someone else that perhaps couldn't make the meeting tonight, they may wish to watch the meeting at a later date, we will have access to the recorded video for everyone. We're going to have a Q&A section to the meeting tonight, so if you're posting comments and questions throughout the presentation, you may not see them published until we get to that section of the meeting. Comments and questions that are not specific to the application or they're not respectful will not be published, but everything else will be published, the good, the bad. Comments in support or not in support of the application will all be published, so everyone gets a chance to see what other people are saying. If we don't get to your question or comment tonight, but you have other questions that you would like to have answered, please send me an email. My email address is on the screen there. It was also in the letter that was circulated to about 800 people. So please connect with me if we don't get to your question tonight. So the subject properties, as I mentioned, are on Vidal and Thrift. You can see them highlighted in blue there. I just want to point out an error that we had in the circulation that went out, the notice that went out. We mislabeled Everall Street as Oxford Street, so we've corrected that in this image here. But the subject properties are these four properties off of Vidal Street, immediately south of the Beverly building. I want to just go through very briefly the official community plan context and how the OCP, or the official community plan, looks at these properties. So you can see the properties highlighted in the black polygon there. These are the subject properties. They're within the town center transition land use designation within the official community plan. The intention of land use in this designation is to support multi-unit residential types of land use, and also to support an intensity of development that contributes to the vitality of the town center. So we're about 600 to 700 meters away from the town center, so the OCP is looking to support low-rise to high-rise buildings within the transition area in a sort of residential form that then supports the concentration of commercial uses in the town center. I mentioned low to high-rise buildings, and I think a lot of the discussion that we may have tonight relates to building height. What is a low-rise building? What is a high-rise building? So we have a figure in the official community plan that looks at, it's essentially a height schedule, so it's looking at potential heights within different parts of the city. So you can see the subject properties are shown on the screen here with the star. They're sort of within the range of the 12 to 6 transition area moving away from the town center. So in the town center, we have a concentration of taller buildings, 25-story buildings moving southward down to 16 along Johnston Street, and then moving west along Thrift, we transition to 8 and 6, and then again moving south from North Bluff Road from 18 to 12 to 4 at Oxford Street, Oxford and Thrift. We also have a measure of density. So density in the OCP is considered on the basis of a floor area ratio, and what that means is it's a multiplier to the size of land. So if you have a 1 acre parcel and you have a 1.5 FAR ratio, then you get 1.5 times the area of the lot in allowable gross floor area of development. So in this particular case, the subject property is within an area where 1.5 FAR is considered. And there are some other policies that I'll speak to that allow for increases to that density or that gross floor area of construction based on the tenure of housing proposed. As I mentioned, the project is for a rezoning application or a zoning amendment in addition to a major development permit. So the property is within the multi-family development permit area. I'm going to leave it with the architects from Keystone to go through the design elements of the project and their alignment with some of the DP area guidelines. But it is subject to a development permit, and the development permit is really intended to manage and control the form and character of the development. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kim Moust, who is a representative and a member or the vice president of real estate at Westone Group. So Kim, did you want to share your screen and provide an overview of Westone?
Yes, so I'll do that. Hang on here. Good evening, everyone. Westone would like to thank you for taking the time to be with us today, and we look forward to answering your questions related to the Vidal project. Westone is a locally owned and operated development company with our head office in Surrey, BC. And we have a wide range of development and property management experience both here and in the United States. On your screen, you'll see a brief about Westone. I'm going to flip back to this screen near the end of my presentation, and you'll get a chance to read it all then. But in the meantime, I want to show you some examples of projects that we are currently working on. Fusion, which is located next to the Surrey Memorial Hospital, was a 100% purpose-built rental building with 147 units in it. It is completely occupied and under operation at this time, and our tenant mix include doctors and nurses from Surrey Memorial, members of the local fire department, members of the police department, and we even had a couple of BC Lions. In addition, we are working on or actually building a project at Scott Road next to the Surrey Sky Station there and the brand new community center. This will be 514 purpose-built rental units as well. And we're very excited about bringing this rental project into well, we're about to give it occupancy about November of this year, with completing the project next summer. In addition, we also have planned a 50-story student-focused tower in the center of Surrey, which will also provide rental accommodations. It will also feature a large college component at the base of the building. Sorry about that.
Kim, if I can just interrupt for 1 second.
Yep.
I'm just hoping, I see someone in the question and answer box has mentioned that sound is off. I wonder if someone can provide a comment to let us know if you can hear us okay.
Were you hearing me, Greg?
Yeah, I can hear you.
While we're waiting for that, I'll continue by saying this is this page, which I'm sure will be available in the presentation, gives a list of projects completed by the developer. As you can see, we've been operating for a fair length of time, building projects throughout BC and indeed in the United States as well.
You're good, Kim. Yeah, thanks.
We are very excited to present to you our development plans for the Vidal project. It is our intent to build purpose-built rental featuring top quality finishes and a wide variety of unit sizes. We wish to provide a wide spectrum of housing choices to tenants in White Rock. In particular, we wish to introduce into the White Rock rental market smaller suites that will provide an affordable option to individuals, in particular for seniors wishing to live independently. These smaller units may increase the unit count in comparison to projects like the Beverly, directly adjacent to Vidal. However, the occupancy load of these suites will be controlled through the management of the property. One-bedroom units will manage to have a maximum of 2 people, but they are often rented by 1 person in our experience. The studios will be limited to those wishing to live alone. Westone will provide on-site concierge service for the property, and this manager will reside in the building, thus ensuring that the property is well managed. We are excited to feature electric car charging infrastructure throughout the park. And we are exploring opportunities to dedicate parking stalls for car share operators. No decision has been made related to whether or not this project will be pet friendly. We are interested in hearing comments from our neighbors as we develop this pet policy. I'd also like to note that when looking at developing this site, we chose to keep the building format low and going with a 6.5 story option in order to be respectful to the neighbors and help to preserve views. Our design team is here to take you through the project specifics. But before I turn the presentation over to our team, I'd like to close by saying that we are excited to open an ongoing dialogue with our neighbors, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Great, thank you, Kim. And with that, I think if our architect team would like to share their screen, and I'll just introduce, we have Noel Lim and Eric Poxletner from Keystone Architecture to go through a presentation. We also have, as I mentioned, representatives Mark van der Zalm and Derek van der Brink from the landscape architecture team, and then Jonathan Ho from Binney and Associates, the transportation consultant. So I'll turn it over to Noel and Eric to go through the proposal.
Okay, thank you, Greg. My name's Eric Poxletner. I'm a senior architect principal here at Keystone. Noel Lim is the project lead. He's going to kind of walk you through some of the specifics. Just as an overview, you can see from the images the project is specifically designed with an intent to maximize views toward the south and create a much low level and sedimentary approach that sort of follows the site and sort of allows to still maximize views from all the neighboring properties. So the design is kind of comes out of sort of a more of a natural material West Coast modernist sort of typology that sort of fits in with a lot of the neighboring and adjacent vernacular and architecture in White Rock, with a lot of stone, glass, wood elements. And the intent is to sort of feel like a hillside building. And so unobtrusive and a wonderful place to live with great rooftop and large balconies to the south. So the main entry is along Vidal Street, with sort of glass elements and stepped stone and wood elements along that side, with sort of points of entry along the ground floor plan, so it feels like a low scale building and sort of fits more into a human scale neighborhood. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Noel to talk a little bit about the specifics of the project.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Noel. I'm a project coordinator here at Keystone Architecture, and I'm happy to go through this project with you guys. So just to introduce the project, it's a 129 unit, 6-story apartment building with 3 levels of below grade parking. If we're to go over the project data quickly, the unit types range from studios up to 3 bedrooms, and from about 323 square feet for the studio units up to just over 1,000 square feet for the 3-bedroom units. Just to go over a little bit of context, I know Greg's already kind of done this, but the site is located at the corner of Thrift and Vidal, mainly going up along Vidal to the north. It's made up of 4 sites zoned as RS1 and RT1 right now, and they existing on the site are 3 single-family residential buildings. We've provided some photos there just to show the context a little bit of what's currently the existing conditions. Just going through the site plan, we have Vidal Street along the east frontage here, and Thrift along to the south. The main residential entry is centered on the building along Vidal Street, with individual unit entries scattered along the length of the project on Vidal Street. Parkade Access is close to the south end of the site, with 3 levels located on the southern end, and an oversized loading zone located completely on our project site as well. Just going through the parkade, as you can see here, the access ramp accesses the parkade at level P2 with adjacent to the loading zone, and excuse me, the waste collection is also near the entrance to allow for easy access for garbage collection. There are 19 EV stalls currently located on P2, 3 of which are for visitor and 16 of which are used for the residential. The bike storage facilities are located on the P1 level here, with access to the exterior via a door adjacent to the main entrance. There are 39 visitor stalls that are provided for on the P2 level, as well as 155 residential stalls provided on all 3 levels, secured by parking gates. There are a small number of residential units on the P1 level, which peak out due to the slope of the site, and the service rooms are also located on P1. On the first level, you can see that the main entry is again near the center of the building. And we've also provided walk-up access to units ranging in size from studios up to 2-bedroom units. The first of 2 amenity rooms is located on the south end of the project, with a large amenity deck to the south to maximize the views. And the interior space is about 1,200 square feet. The exterior amenity space is just over 2,000 square feet. Moving up to the second floor plan, there is again another amenity space just over 500 square feet, and another deck just over 1,800 square feet to finish off the interior and lower portion of the amenity space. Moving on to the 3rd through 5th levels, our unit mix includes 25 studios ranging in size from 323 to 373 square feet, 55 1-bedroom units ranging in size from 446 square feet to 547 square feet, 36 2-bedroom units ranging in size from 585 square feet to 978 square feet, and finally 13 3-bedroom units ranging in size from 918 square feet to 1,063 square feet. Lastly, to close off our amenity space, we have a rooftop outdoor amenity deck with the majority covering the roof and totaling 9,775 square feet of outdoor amenity space. Now I'll pass it back to Eric to go through the architecture.
Yeah, just sort of speaking further to outside amenity spaces and walkability, livability in terms of how we approach the architecture, with a lot of landscaping along the perimeter, stone and stepping, terracing. And then in terms of materiality, wood posts and metal panel, sort of finishing off some of the exterior elements. with some slate sort of stone, flat stone material around the entrance and manufactured stone along the perimeter. And there's there's some domain entry coming into the building with some bike racks along there. Landscape sort of terraced areas as it moves down the street. Yeah, and that's up to the north of the project, facing the existing site up to the north. So again, generally trying to sort of keep the scale of the building feeling a very human scale, not obtrusive. I think I turn this over to landscape.
Did you want to go over?
Yeah, this is just a section showing the existing building to the north of Beverly and how there was careful thought in this building to try to keep, again, good views from that building out down toward the ocean.
I'm just going to go through some SEPTED, so crime prevention, some of the sustainability principles, and just a brief overview of the traffic report. So we've allowed for clear viewpoints throughout the site. Residential windows and balconies all look over the site to make sure that there's clear visibility lines. There's going to be a secured underground parkade for the residents and visitors, and site lighting will illuminate the public areas. In terms of natural access control, there's one clearly defined residential entry point, and as Kim has gone through, there's an extensive maintenance and management program already instituted by Weststone. Bike parking is 129 tenant bike stalls and 27 bike rack units on the exterior. We have an allowance for 19 electrical cars, as we've gone through already. We plan to meet or exceed all of the new energy and ASHRAE code requirements. Exterior lighting will be dark sky compliant and use LED fixtures. And we have located our underground parking underneath the building to minimize asphalt and to maximize landscaping, which landscape will go through shortly. The traffic, just to go through the highlights. The study area is located in close proximity to existing transit routes and regional cycling routes. There are existing pedestrian facilities provided on the study roadways as well. A new pedestrian sidewalk is proposed along Vidal and Thrift, adjacent to the project. And the project, again, is going to provide ample bike parking. The traffic generation routes. At full build-out, the proposed development is expected to generate 47 building trips onto a study road network during the AM peak hours, with 12 inbound trips and 35 outbound trips. The proposed development is expected to generate 57 trips onto the study road during the PM hours, with 35 inbound and 22 outbound. The site access is, proposed development is expected to provide one access point along Vidal, north of Thrift, with free-flowing traffic maintained on Vidal. Proposed driveway distance from Thrift is expected to meet and exceed the minimum as required by the Transportation Association of Canada. The waste collection will be, again, all on site. And as the study has shown by Binny, and they can clarify if you have any questions, that the current operating population on the site right now will not be significantly affected by the development and the amount of parking and provisions for bike as well as transit on the site. Now I'll pass it on to Derek from Vandalzam, and he will go through the landscape.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Derek with Vandalzam Associates, and I'm going to briefly take you through the landscape for the Vidal project here. Firstly, I'm going to draw attention to the extensive work that has been done in trying to ensure that all of the offsite trees to the west and to the north have the best opportunity to continue to grow and thrive. And so along the west side here, we've had arborists on site to take a look at and map how much of a critical root zone there is. And so then the building envelope has already been adapted to allow the trees to, so that it will not impede into those critical root zone areas, as well as to the north along those existing trees. And then arborists will be on staff during excavation as well to monitor these trees and to ensure that they will have the best case and the best chance to continue to thrive and grow. And then here we're going to work our way from the down up and just take you through some of the landscape elements. This is the P1 level where we're showing some of the tiered landscape that works with the whole idea of a running downhill and tiered hillside, as well as showing some of the private patios along for some of the units on the P2 or P1 level here. For the main level here, we once again have the tiered landscape along Vidal with retaining walls building up to the private patios, providing a little bit of privacy in there so that people can be outside and enjoy their outdoor space while not being while having a nice landscape buffer between them, as well as a landscape buffer along all the edges of the building, private patios as well on the level 1 floor, and then down into the amenity area that's on the south side overlooking, like looking out towards the White Rock there. Here we have lounge chairs and sun decks, as well as a little bit of planting and casual seating to allow people to come outside and make use of the space and the views from this area. Moving up to the level 2 plan, we have private patios as well, and then mainly the amenity area where we are featuring a outdoor kitchen, as well as some harvest tables and casual seating, as well as some community garden boxes and a potting table to allow people to come and enjoy the sunshine and the views. And then finally up to the rooftop, where we are featuring some raised planters as well to try and green up the roof, allowing some trees to grow as well as shrubbery, and then also highlighting, bringing in a graphical element to the design with a green roof and pathway through there to make it interesting to look at, as well as having a trellis and casual seating and some built-in seating with fire pits to allow the users and residents some nice amenity areas out top. And finally, with some tables, movable tables and chairs, and some dining room to once again bring people out, looking closer to the views to the south. This is just some of the grading, showing that we're being cognizant of the offsite conditions and trying to work it into the landscape, and then showing some of the character of the landscape elements that we're going to be proposing for it, with like that we're playing off of the architecture with the wood and the metal beams, as well as some graphical / landscape elements that become a focal point within the landscape itself. Fire pits and sun decks, lounge chairs, as well as glass railings across. Going into the green roof using sedum and such to make it have a little bit of a graphical representation across the top, and then the built-in seat walls, community garden, and outdoor kitchen area. And I believe that is all I have for landscape. I'm not sure who's going to be taking over from here.
Hi there. Sorry about that. I'm troubleshooting some issues on the other end. I'm going to share my screen again, so we'll open it up now to comments and questions from the public. And I just want to stress, so we're recording the video, so I'll make sure that people that perhaps were not able to get into this meeting have access to the video. And as I say, we can, I'm happy to take comments and questions and work with the project team to get answers. I would ask people participating, I see at this point we have about 25 attendees in the sort of digital room. We have an online comment sheet, so if this were a more traditional public information meeting, we're at the library, we would ask people to complete comment forms. We've created a digital one that you can see, there's a link there, so if you go to the City White Rocks events calendar, and you click on the event that's related to the August 20th meeting, so tonight's meeting, you'll see in the details a digital comment form. So would certainly encourage people to submit their comments through the form. If you've already provided an email to me with comments, I am going to try to go through a response to those comments and questions with the time that we have tonight. But we'll also present those comments and questions in a future report to council so that council sees the feedback that the public is providing. So with that, what we'll start to do is I have about 11 comments so far. I'm going to start to publish the comments. The one thing I wanted to do, and I think I'll answer a couple of the comments and questions right off the bat with some information. I just want to make sure that it's clear to those participating in the digital meeting. So just for clarity, we have 129 residential rental units. So one of the comments that we published early on was that the units would be rental and not for sale. So that is correct. So it is proposed as a rental 10-year building. 129 units. The breakdown of the units, I think it's just important to note because one of the things that city staff are doing is ensuring that the project is aligned with the policies of the official community plan. And so one of the policy objectives of the official community plan is to make sure that we have what is referred to as family-friendly housing. So housing with bedrooms that are sufficient to accommodate a traditional family. So the project proposes 25 studio units, 55 one-bedroom units, and family-friendly housing is considered 2- and 3-bedroom units or larger. So we have 36 2-bedroom units and 13 3-bedroom units within the project. So as a percentage of the total project, we have 38% of the units being family-friendly housing, and the OCP seeks to have 35% of all units being family-friendly housing. So I just wanted to give those participating a sense of the breakdown of the units, the size of units. The other thing is just on parking. So I see there's I'll publish a question here about what will the ratio of units to parking spaces be. So I've published that comment. The proposed supply of parking is 180, and it's 14 spaces less than what the bylaw, the zoning standards would require. The zoning standard requires 1.2 spaces for residents per unit, so 1.2 parking spaces per residential unit for residents, and then 0.3 spaces per unit for visitors. So applying those numbers to the 129 units proposed, the project requires 155 residential parking spaces and 39 visitor spaces. The project is proposing 39 visitor spaces, so it's aligned with the supply requirements for visitor parking, and is proposing 141 spaces for residents, of which 5 are designed for barrier-free access. So there, as I mentioned, there are 14 spaces less than what the zoning bylaw would require for resident parking. The ratio is 1.09 versus the 1.2 that's established in the zoning bylaw. The other thing I wanted to point out, as I mentioned on the slide, I illustrated the 1.5 floor area ratio. This project is proposing a 2.1 floor area ratio. We have a policy in the official community plan that identifies that there can be a 40% increase to the allowable floor area if at least 50% of the floor area within the 40% is dedicated to rental housing. In this case, the entire project is dedicated to rental housing, so the applicant is seeking approval of a building with massing that allows for 2.1 floor area ratio, so 2.1 times the area of the lot made up in building floor area. So I'm going to start to try to group some of the comments that we've received together so that the project team can respond to them, or myself on behalf of the city will respond to them. So there is a couple comments about views, so I'm not sure if a member of the architecture team wants to speak to view. There's a comment, this is going to completely take away my view, not improve it. Did anyone from the architecture team want to speak to efforts to address impacts to view?
Yeah, just the way the building is stepped along the site there is to maximize the amount of views still available to the neighboring properties. I mean, it still is a 6-story property, but because of the nature of the hillside, it really minimizes it. Blockage as best as it can possibly do, other than having a high-rise or any type of a taller building there that would have been allowable under that zone.
Also on the north side of the tower, or building, sorry, it's probably only about 3.5 stories as opposed to the 6 that we're saying it is, because of the amount of the parking that is buried and allowed us to go that 6 stories into the hillside.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to publish a couple of comments and questions about the amount of building coverage on the lot. So there is a question here, what public areas will the developer provide? Beverly had to provide a public park, and there's a similar question about what is the percentage of lot coverage, what's allowed. So perhaps I can speak just to the lot coverage. So the proposed lot coverage is 43%, whereas the maximum amount of the ground that the building can cover is 45%. So the project is compliant with the maximum lot coverage. So 57%, the remaining amount would be unencumbered by buildings or structures. So it would be open sort of landscaped programmed spaces. There's not a requirement for a dedication of land for public parkland, and so that is not part of the proposal. Perhaps I'll direct a couple of questions to the proponent, perhaps Kim in your group. Question about security cameras. So will there be cameras? Will they be on? Question about potential projected rents. Do you want to speak to those?
Sure. Yes, there will be video cameras and security for the building. There will also be a concierge living in the building for added security and be able to deal with any issues that may arise. We're projecting that this building will be full market rents. The only subsidized rents that we are going to allow in this building would be related to tenants relocating from another White Rock project, and their subsidies would be for a limited time period. So it's going to be a full market building. We're planning to build it the same way we would build a condo building. It'll have Caesar stone countertops, tile floors, nice wood finishes. The same theme that the architect is painstakingly gone to do such a beautiful exterior of the building. That same sort of theme will be throughout the building. We're planning to have very nice finishes and offer this product to a wide variety of potential residents. Does that cover everything, Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Kim. A couple of questions about building height, and maybe we can have some clarification from the architect team on this as well. But just regarding the current maximum height allowed in the zone, there's a question. So as I mentioned at the introduction, maybe I'll just go back there. The project relates to 4 separate parcels of land. So hopefully you can see this here. So immediately south of the Beverly, this parcel here is zoned. It's a special site-specific comprehensive development zone. It's a CD 32 zone. And I'll just let the participants know kind of what that zone allows for. So it allows for 8 dwelling units in a multifamily residential form, so an apartment style form with a building height of 11.5 meters, so about 4 stories, 3.5 stories will be permitted on that site. On the lands immediately south of the CD32 zone, so this is an RT1 zone, which is a duplex zone, so it allows for a duplex being, I believe it's 7.7 meters, so 3 stories, roughly 2.5 stories in building height. And then the 2 parcels at 1441 and then the parcel that abuts Thrift are both zoned RS1, which allows for 7.7 meters of building height. So the second question relates to, maybe it's just a point of clarification for the actual building height on the north side of the structure. I think it might have been mentioned that it was 3 stories. Don't believe that's correct. Can you clarify what that is?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Well, on the north side of the building, I think, Noel, you might have mentioned that it functions more as a 3-story building, but I'm not sure if you want to. You're welcome to share your screen and sort of throw the elevation on if it helps to sort of demonstrate what the building height is on the north side.
Sure. So this would be the north side on the west elevation, showing the second story, or sorry, the first story essentially below grade with some allowances for patio spaces. So you are correct, it is about 4 stories, including a rooftop, a deck, amenity, so 3 was a little bit under. But as you can see, it is substantially lower than the 6-story, which shows on the south side of the site.
Okay, thank you, Noel. I've published a couple other questions if you want to speak to them about how the roof deck maybe contributes to building height. The question is, does the roof deck effectively make it a 7-story building?
So the only portions of the building that stick up above the 6-story or the 6-story are the stair cores and the elevator core. So by code, that doesn't qualify the building as a 7th story, and they are minimal in terms of actual footprint of the roof. So it doesn't really intrude or create too many shadow lines from that height.
Okay, thank you. And a couple maybe related questions. Is it a wood frame building or a concrete building?
It'll be non-combustible, so concrete.
Okay. Maybe changing themes a little bit, there's a question about accessibility. As I mentioned in the parking summary, there is the parking plan proposes 5 barrier-free spaces. Will any of the units be designed to be accessible units?
I believe we have allowances for it right now, and that'll be on a per client basis. If the if our client Weston believes that more spaces are needed, then we'll account for that.
In terms of the unit composition itself, will any of the units themselves be designed for accessible access?
Currently, they are not.
I'll publish there's a question here. Sorry, Kim.
Hi, Greg. We will make accommodations for some of the units to be handicapped accessible, and may also ensure that we have pre-wired for automatic openers so that doors are accessible. So we will certainly be making accommodations for accessible units going forward.
Okay, thank you. I published a question. It says to clarify, the proposed upzone increases maximum units from 12 to 129 and increases density to maximum allowable under OCP with the rental density bonus. And that's correct. So the proposal is proposing 129 rental units with a 2.1 floor area ratio, which would be the 1.5 recognized in the OCP plus 40% increase with the dedication to rental tenure units. So I think perhaps I'll ask Jonathan to take the next handful of questions, or a couple questions here regarding parking and and the traffic study. So there's a comment about parking is already a problem on Vidal. How will that be managed with the massive increase in residents on a quiet street? Maybe Jonathan, I can start on a couple of the ones regarding on-street parking, and then if there are related ones about the actual traffic, then I'll direct those to you. So the one thing that I just wanted to point out on the on-street parking, so right now there's only parking on the east side of Vidal. As part of the project, the city is looking for a dedication of land, so a widening of land, to ultimately support a more complete street arrangement. So with the widening of land as sites are redeveloped along Vidal, the city has an opportunity to seek a dedication of land, a widening. So that would be sought, and that has been communicated to the proponent in this case, to eventually have sufficient road width to have 2 lanes of traffic and then parking plus a boulevard and sidewalk on both sides of the street. Regarding I'm just reading the questions as we go to make sure I'm grouping them. So Jonathan, a question here. The traffic study does not account for traffic already generated by buildings in the area, plus all the traffic generated by service vehicles, garbage trucks, contractors, and so on. Do you want to speak to that?
Yep, certainly. Yeah, good question there. So overall, we prepared the transportation study following the city terms of reference. So as part of our review, we actually collected the field traffic data, which would have captured all the traffic being generated by the adjacent developments as well, as well as just kind of through traffic on Thrift Avenue, Thrift, and also on Vidal. And all these information were taken together, and then we have analyzed them, and they were able to show that the proposed development is going to generate negligible impacts on the road network. So the road network itself will have the capacity to accommodate the traffic generated from this development.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. There are a couple of questions regarding construction. Kim, I don't know if you want to give a sense of the period that it would take to start and finish construction. There's a question, how long would it take to build? And then there's an expression of concern about there is an application on the property at 1464 Vidal, so across the street from this site. And so there's a question of concern, or expression of concern about if both projects, I think, were to proceed together, how construction traffic would be managed. So did you want to speak maybe to the duration of construction?
Sure, thank you. This project will take approximately 16 to 18 months to construct once the project is started. And we would have a traffic management plan, we would have a dust control plan, and we would have a noise and debris plan all in place as part of the construction. And we are we welcome comments of the neighbors, and we are willing to keep an ongoing open dialogue with the neighbors about how construction is going, and we will have a contact person for you to talk to, so that if you have any concerns, we will address them immediately.
Thanks, Kim. And the other thing I would add is the city would be working with any sort of developer on the staging of construction, and we would have traffic management plans and that sort of thing to ensure that there was no obstruction to traffic along Vidal if in particular both projects were to proceed at the same time. But I think we're fairly far away from that stage of these projects. There's a question regarding height again. I don't know if a member of the architecture team would like to speak to that, Noel or Eric, just about the height that's being proposed. It might relate to floor to ceiling height as well, the form of construction. It's just why is an 84-foot height needed for 6 stories?
Where the floor-to-floor heights are standard 9 feet, or sorry, clear heights are 9 feet. So in a concrete building, that would be 9'8", at most 10 feet floor to floor. We have some build outs on the architecture that give extra height on the top level units. I think the only thing that would hit that 84-foot mark is the overrun for the elevator, just where it pops up above onto the roof deck.
Thank you. There's a comment about the Parkade entrance being too close to Thrift to look at moving it to the north end. Jonathan, is that one that you wanted to respond to?
I'm thinking that this one could be myself and the architect. So we did review, and I believe it was presented at the beginning that the parking access has been assessed in terms of distance from Thrift, and it does meet the industry guidelines of the minimum setback requirement. Okay,
thank you. A question about the setback of the building from the north side. I know the drawing that, here, I'll just put it up on the screen here. There's a question about this 3-meter setback at the north end of the building, and the standard in the sort of stock high-rise or high-density residential zone, multifamily apartment style zone. The standard setback is 6 meters. I just wanted to clarify that the 3 meters proposed is largely encompassing the open-air balconies and portions of the parkade, whereas the actual tower portion of the building is closer to 6 meters from the north property line. So I think on plan view here, it looks as though it's a 3-meter setback, or that's what's labeled on the drawing. But the actual setback of the structure is, based on our measurements and review of the file, between 5 and 6 meters. So just to clarify that point. A question about community amenity contributions. So because the project is seeking additional density, it's going from what the zoning would allow for being generally 1.75. It's going from 1.75 to 2.1. So through the rezoning process, the city has the opportunity to have a conversation about community amenity contributions. And so that is something that if council wishes this project to proceed, we would be having those conversations with the applicant. And one of the types of amenities that can be provided is cash that can be put into an affordable housing reserve fund, or direct allocation towards affordable housing units. So that is something that we can certainly discuss with the applicant as the file proceeds. There's a comment about potential impacts of the project to someone's home-based business. I don't know if that relates to concerns about during the period of construction or afterwards. I think it's reasonable to acknowledge that there would be some short-term noise and dust generated by the development of the building.
There certainly will be, but again, we will be controlling dusts with wheel washing stations, and the noise will be within bylaw. So we will make sure that it doesn't start too early, it doesn't go too late, and that Sundays are quiet. The standard rules, and we'll do everything we can to mitigate noise and dust throughout the construction.
Thanks, Kim. There's another related question about, is there a noise plan and how would noise be regulated? The city does have a noise bylaw, so we'd be ensuring that any sort of construction plans were respecting the conditions and the parameters of the noise bylaw. A question about the accessibility of the building from the front entrance. Did anyone from the architecture team wish to speak to that?
Yeah, there is direct access via a ramp that is handicap accessible straight up to the front entrance.
Okay, thank you. There's a question or a comment about density being higher than 90 units per acre. I'm not sure if that's a reference to the previous official community plan. The current official community plan regulates density on the basis of floor area ratio, or FAR. So it's more dealing with the massing of the building and not so much the measurement of the number of units per acre. And the project as presented here is aligned with the floor area ratios that are contemplated in the OCP, the official community plan. There's a question about perhaps clarification regarding the widening of Vidal. So through the rezoning process, the city has the opportunity to ask for a dedication of land, so a dedication of private land to the city that can, excuse me, then be used for the programming of that space, so the widening of the paved portion of the road to provide space for on-street parking, in addition to the widening of a grass boulevard for street tree plantings and a sidewalk as well. So the city, through this process, is seeking a widening of the portion of Vidal Street that abuts the 4 subject properties. Someone is not satisfied with the response regarding building height. I'm not sure if there's a need for clarification on the floor to ceiling heights, the height perhaps between the ceiling and the floor above. Just a question, I guess, about the 12-foot perhaps.
Our drawings show 10-foot floor to floor with the top floor being 12 feet. I'm not sure, Greg, what the issue of concern is or the discrepancy is.
Yeah, I think perhaps that can be something that we can further evaluate if the commenter wanted to email me more specifically what the concerns would be.
Yeah, that's fine.
There's a comment about clearing the site. I know there was concern about some overgrowth on the lands immediately south of the Beverly, and the city has been working with the developer, and I understand that the lands have actually been cleared. So I'm not sure if there's more work to be done. And again, I guess if there is, then the developer was very responsive to the city's request to have the lands cleaned up, and my understanding is that the work was done. But if there's more work to be done, not to speak on behalf of the developer, but I get the impression that they would be happy to clean things up.
Hi, Greg. Yes, indeed, you are correct there. There may be just a misunderstanding of what is actually being asked. If it is tree growth or bush growth that is getting too close to the Beverly property, I will have a look at that tomorrow and have it addressed immediately.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to publish some of the comments that I don't know that they're they're requesting a response. And if that's not the case, if people would like a specific response to a question or comment, please please let us know. Questions about the start of construction, as I mentioned, and I'm gonna sort of, once you get, well, I think what I'll do now, I'll provide maybe an indication of next steps, and please keep the comments and questions coming. But I think next steps may help to address some of the questions that we've gotten. So there's a question here, can I still provide comments, feedback this week so that they make it to council? When's the projected start date of the project? So just in terms of where we are in the process, and I think what I probably should do is put a bit of an infographic together. We're at the very early stages of the project. This is really intended to be a public information meeting to raise awareness about the project, to have an initial discussion about what's being proposed on these lands. We're really looking for your early feedback, so I do want to acknowledge that we've received a collection of comments from the residents of the Beverly building that I've shared with the applicant and the project team, and we're happy to go through some of these questions a bit later. But we're, like I said, we're in the early stages of review. The proponent will take the feedback that they get tonight back and look at whether or not adjustments need to be made to the plan. And then, as you can see in the slide there, the project will then be presented to the advisory design panel. So following tonight, we'll take the feedback. The applicant will be expected to make some changes to the design. We'll then present the application to the advisory design panel. And then there may be further revisions after that. And then once the project is in a position to be carried forward, city staff would prepare a zoning amendment bylaw, and that bylaw would be presented to the Land Use and Planning Committee, which is a standing committee of council. So the bylaw would be presented to council, Land Use and Planning Committee, for first and second reading. If the bylaw receives first and second reading, it would then be referred to a statutory public hearing. So until that time, please feel free, if you're participating in this, to send comments to me. All written comments, all emails will form part of a future report to council. So when we present council with bylaws for first and second reading, we will attach all comments, and we'll have the benefit of coming out of this public information meeting. There will be a public information meeting summary that the applicant puts together based on the comments you're receiving tonight, and we'll also present that to council. And then you, the participating member of the public, will have an opportunity to formally speak to council during a public hearing and to express your concerns and interests direct to council. I will say that with COVID being what it is, we have had a couple of quasi-digital public hearings. So we've had members of the public attending a space at the White Rock Community Center and speaking direct to council via video feed. So council's in council chambers, and members of the public are going to the White Rock Community Center to speak via video feed to council and express their concerns in a quasi-digital way. The White Rock Community Center gives us a little more space to support physical distancing, and it has worked for a couple of public hearings up until this point. If council provides first and second readings of the bylaw, we would have the public hearing. Based on the feedback that we get during the public hearing, we would again debrief with the applicant and their team to look at where changes need to be made before bringing a bylaw back to council for a third reading. And then after third reading, there are typically conditions of approval. For example, there were some questions from the residents of the Beverly building about whether or not the RCMP and the city's fire departments and engineering were involved in any of the review of this project, and so they have been involved. The RCMP has not expressed any interest or concern with the project. The fire department has expressed a need for some life safety enhancements to the Parkade to make sure that their radio receivers are adequately working. So one thing that we would likely do, and it would be a condition of third reading of any bylaw, would be the registration of covenants on title. There's something called a life safety covenant. So we would look at registering a life safety covenant on title that says that the developer would be required to put in place certain enhancements to the Parkade, the communications capabilities within the Parkade, so that first responders can speak with one another if they're within the Parkade structure. There would also be the requirement for the execution of a servicing and works agreement with the city's engineering and operations department for posting of securities for the roadwork. So as I mentioned, there would be a requirement for a dedication of land along Vidal for the widening of the street, for the installation of sidewalks, for street tree planting. So all of that would be wrapped into a legal agreement with the developer posting security, so it actually comes to fruition in the lead up to granting final approval of the project. So we would make sure we have an agreement in place, securities, legal covenants where need be. So all that would be tied to as conditions to final reading ultimately. And then once those things are in place, we bring a report back to council to give final reading to bylaw and to issue development permits. So as I mentioned, we're still fairly early in the stages of review and discussion with the public. So I don't want people to think that construction is imminent. We are working with the applicant and their team on a number of technical details. So hopefully that helps. I see some other questions coming in. A question about when will the presentation be made available online. So I did speak with the gentleman earlier on the call here about having trouble accessing the meeting. So we will post the recorded video to the city's YouTube page probably in the next 2 weeks, if not sooner. There's a question about the garbage trucks accessing the loading space for garbage pickup. I'm not sure, Jonathan or Noel or Eric, if you wanted to speak to how garbage would be managed on site. We have seen some comments about garbage pickup. I've received a number of phone calls and emails from residents along Vidal about all the garbage bins that are stored on the street. And so maybe you can just speak to how garbage will be managed.
So maybe I'll start first, and then I guess Noel can jump in as well. So based on comments received from the city, the project team has kind of looked at how solid waste can be better managed. And one of the way to address these comments, and also now hearing from the public, is that the solid waste collection would be conducted within the building itself through the use of compactors, and also using smaller vehicles that can kind of go inside the parkade and bring that bring the solid waste out. And if needed, there's also a loading space being provided that can do additional collection as needed. But the intention is to keep everything on site and not on the street.
Thank you, Jonathan. On a maybe not a similar vein, but there is a question about the shortfall in parking. So as I mentioned in the parking summary, the parking required for residents is 14 stalls less than what is required by the general standards in the zoning bylaw. I'm not sure, Kim, if you wanted to speak to your experience in some of your other rental projects in the Lower Mainland, or if Jonathan, you wish to speak to the ratio of parking tied to rental tenure housing in a multifamily form from other experience, but I'll defer to you on that question.
I'll let Kim go first.
Yes, thank you. We have noted in other buildings that we have currently rented that the parking requirements are generally 30 to 40% lower than our condo buildings. But admittedly, some of those buildings are closer to SkyTrain than what we will have here. And when I say 30 to 40% less than the normal parking requirement, in Surrey, they require 1 stall per unit. So we would generally start with less stalls. So because that this doesn't easily equate, I have asked Binny to look into what they believe would be direct comparables and give us advice. And they've said that being 14 stalls short should be easily accommodatable with the fact that we are going with a rental building, and in fact are going to be targeting some seniors. But I'll let him speak directly to that and explain our position.
Awesome, thank you, Kim, for the lead-in. So yes, when we look at the parking shortfall, typically what we do as a best practice is we refer to an industry publication called ITE Parking Demand Generation Manual. And we'll look at comparable land uses and look at what are the peak kind of parking demand being generated. So in this case, even with the 14 parking shortfall and 15 based on the latest number that Greg has provided tonight, the peak, the typical parking demand, which is kind of overnight when all the residents are home, that demand is still well within the parking supply being provided. And second of all, we are also providing basically visitor parking that meets the bylaw requirement. So ensuring that people visiting the building will have parking that meets the city's bylaw. So the only variance that the project is really seeking is on the residential parking. There's a couple of other things to look at. It's we compared, like Kim has said, other rates across Lower Mainland at comparable municipalities, so sites that are not close to mass transit. And for example, in the North Shore, the parking that they have for a rental type of land use is actually 0.6 parking stall per unit, with 0.1 visitor space per unit. So we're talking about 0.7, whereas even with the parking variance today, I believe we're providing about 1.39. So we're still well above some other jurisdiction in terms of what is typically required for a rental property. Last but not least, we have also looked at other rental housing developments. And one of the more recent review that we found that is the demand is typically at 0.55 the parking space per unit. So we have for example, typically you're looking at maybe half of the space or maybe 60% of the space would be occupied. So we are looking at we anticipate that there will be a little bit of an oversupply of the parking, and so there, as a result of that, our study did not believe that the parking variance will contribute to any negative impacts on the adjacent road.
Thank you, Jonathan. I see I was sharing my screen there for a minute, so I will be sharing a recorded copy of the video to a few people that are having trouble getting access to the platform. Question about, is the city considering resident-only permit parking for existing apartments? The city does have a residential permit parking program, and I understand that residents can apply for on-street parking permits. I don't know if this is a location that is part of the on-street parking program, so if that commenter wishes to email me directly, I will get an answer to that. A comment about impacts to the value of properties. I'm not sure if anyone wishes to speak to that. It's not a matter that planning staff typically evaluate. It may be a matter that council wishes to consider. I don't know if, as I say, Kim or anyone else wishes to kind of look at potential impacts to value, and perhaps Kim, you can speak to the quality of the product that Westone does.
Sure. The quality of product for our rental product is equivalent to our condo product. We don't see a difference, and in fact, our focus with our architect and our designer is to build a quality white rock product. So we're looking to achieve similar to what you would have in the neighborhood already, if not better, brand new, and with lots of updated features, including EV car chargers and the like. As far as neighborhood values, I'm not an expert at that. I can take that question and see if I can get you some response from people who would actually be an expert. But we will work to make sure that this project fits in well with the neighborhood and looks great and is well managed on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, thank you. There's a couple questions regarding the number of units, the density of development, the scale of development, and I won't put you on the spot, Kim, but I think changes to the density, changes to the unit count, changes to the form of the building are things that we can take back to the applicant. So I'm publishing the comments as we're receiving them here. I don't know if anyone wishes to speak to the form and the unit count within the project. That's something that we can take back from the meeting.
Thank you, and we'd be happy to listen to the comments and have a discussion about it. The one thing that we have heard from the community is that smaller units are rare in the White Rock market, and that's something that we're trying to provide as well.
Kim, I just published a comment along that line. The height issue has not really been addressed. How do you call the development family friendly when the largest unit is a little over 1,000 square feet? Do you have any sort of answer you can provide, maybe in relation to other projects that Westone manages?
Sure. We know that families do live in units of about approximately 1,000 square feet quite often. Our Fusion project had a mix of 2s and 3s that are very similar to the Vidal project. And I can get people data on how people are living in those units, how many individuals we have in each. Happy to do so. And again, as Greg mentioned, if there is a concern that we don't have enough large suites, we can certainly look at putting a few more in the project. We're open to discussion, and we're happy to hear everyone's comments.
Thanks, Kim. A question maybe for for the group about LEED certification. Is there any intention to look at LEED certification of the building?
Not at this time. The local building codes have gotten to the point where they've exceeded LEED. So we will be building to those codes, and of course addressing things like EV car chargers and trying to exceed what is being asked of us to do.
Okay, I'm not sure if Derek from the landscape architecture team wants to speak to any of the stormwater management controls that are being contemplated. There was some rooftop plantings in the designs that may have some value for stormwater control.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. Overall, we typically get into stormwater management farther down the process once we're a little farther along, but definitely there are systems that we are looking at for the rooftop that help with capturing water and storing it and then using it as on a time release basis to allow the plants to soak that up. And so that is definitely something that we can consider and are looking at with this project. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. There's maybe along the line of whether or not the project would be contributing to affordable housing, but would there be any below market housing included in this particular project?
It's not our intent to do any social housing in this project. As I said, there will be some units that are offered up to residents that are in Westone operated White Rock residents now in the building at below market rates. But other than that, our intent is to go with market rents at this time, and by the very nature of the suite sizes, that will be affordable in a product that isn't in the marketplace currently.
Thanks, Kim. Are you comfortable offering any sense of the range of rents that you might be anticipating?
Since the project is well over a year or two away, it is really hard for us to set those rates at this time. So we normally don't do that until we get closer to actually releasing it to the marketplace.
Okay, thank you. comments, I think, again, about the form, whether or not there'd be reduction in density, but there was a question about whether or not the developer would consider a townhouse style of construction. And again, I think that's maybe, if you don't wish to speak to that now, we can circle back and look at that. I just would acknowledge that the official community plan does look for multifamily developments in the town center transition area as a support to the commercial core in the town center. And then, as I went through early on, it does also contemplate buildings between 12 and 6 stories along this portion of Vidal, with floor to area ratio of 1.5, with the 40% increase for rental tenure, which this project is proposing essentially to align with. There's a comment about what aspects of the building would be considered West Coast architecture. If Noel or Eric want to take that one.
Yeah, I mean, West Coast architecture is kind of a broad term, but the reference here is more of a West Coast modernism, which is sort of elements of strong horizontal lines, as you can see with big, large balconies, wood sort of columns, wood beams, the use of glass and transparent materials and stone. That's kind of referencing some of the local other architecture that's referencing a West Coast appearance.
Okay, thank you. That is part of the multifamily residential design guidelines, and that is something that city staff are evaluating this proposal against, so appreciate the comment. There's a question about the residents of Moritz Manor and whether or not they would be accommodated by this project.
The building I am referring to is Moritz Manor, and the development plans for that project are much further behind than this project. This project would go into construction much earlier. What I have promised to the Moritz Manor tenants is that they would have an opportunity to move into this building early if it is completed before Moritz Manor, at the same rates that we would have them move into the replacement building at Moritz Manor that's probably 5 years away.
Okay, thanks, Kim. There's a question about whether there would be age restrictions within the building.
No.
Okay.
Short answer, no age restrictions.
Okay, and then I've sort of been saving this question just because it relates again to timing about when we may be in a position to bring the work back to Land Use and Planning Committee to review a draft development permit. So as I mentioned, the next step coming out of tonight's public information meeting is to present the application to the advisory design panel. At this point, the earliest that I could see this file moving towards ADP would be to a meeting in November, or potentially October at the earliest. So if we went to ADP in October, the applicant would be expected to respond to the feedback that they get from ADP. So it'd be November, December before we're in a position to present the application with bylaws and a draft development permit to the Land Use and Planning Committee. So November, December at the absolute earliest. There's a question about whether or not the proponent would be looking at doing a parkland dedication. I think that's something we can evaluate as we continue our review of the application. Being mindful of time, and as I mentioned, I did get a submission from the residents of the Beverly building, so if there's anything in particular in that submission that those attending would like us to speak to, please let me know. I'm happy to provide a direct response to those questions in a more consolidated and comprehensive way outside of this meeting. But if there are things that people think others might benefit from discussing, please let us know. I'm just reviewing the notes that we received from the residents of the Beverly. I believe we've touched on most of them. I'm just bear with me. Questions about garbage pickup, impacts to traffic, parking along the street are things that we've gone through. Setbacks of the building to the north we've touched on. Whether or not be any special grants, financing, or other incentives being offered to the developer. The answer is the city does not provide any sort of financial incentives. However, I will acknowledge that the project would be subject to a community amenity contribution, as I mentioned, and there is an ability within the city's density bonus policy for a 50% reduction to the CAC contribution with rental tenure housing. So we have 5 minutes left if there are additional questions. A question about whether or not there'd be air conditioning in the building.
We have not gotten that far. I'm sorry, Greg. We haven't gotten that far in our mechanical planning yet. It's something we'll look at when we're looking at mitigating heat gain.
A question about are we censoring questions? The answer is no. I'm publishing them as they come in. The one thing that we haven't really spoken about tonight, maybe I just would offer for those that would be interested, is the subject properties within the Everall neighborhood, recognizing the official community plan as having very large mature trees that are worthy of retention and conservation. So through the city's technical review, we have asked that the developer notch the parkade to ensure that a number of mature trees around the perimeter of the site are retainable and are not impacted by development. So we're on the third iteration of comprehensive review within the city's end, and the applicant has notched the parking to provide space to protect the roots of large mature trees that sort of add to the character of the neighborhood. What's the setback buffer from neighboring Nickel Place on Thrift? I'll get that answer if maybe Cam or someone wishes to respond to this next one about whether or not the building would be pet free.
We haven't set our pet policy yet, and I'd be interested to hear from the neighbors what the concern regarding pets is, so that when we do put together our pet policy, we're making sure that we're addressing those concerns.
Thanks, Kim. The setback on the south side at Thrift is 5 meters from the narrow portion of the building, and there's a bit of a jog in the property line. And so it's 6 meters on the wider portion of the south side of the property. So with that, I would comment about trees being removed. Too many are being removed. I would ask that since we're at 7 o'clock now and just trying to be respectful of people's time, if you wanted to add additional comments, please do complete the online comment sheet with the link there. If you have trouble getting a link or finding the sheet, send me an email. I'll send you a direct link. If you know of other people in the community that had trouble accessing the meeting tonight, please have them get in touch with me and I'll send them a direct link to the recording once it's available. And there's another question here. Perhaps Jonathan, if you wanted to just take one more question about whether or not there's a need for a signalization of the intersection of Vidal and Thrift.
Hi, yeah, thanks for the question. So as part of our transportation study, we did analyze the intersection on Thrift and Vidal, and we found that based on our analysis approach and based on the city required thresholds, a traffic signal is not required.
Thank you. So just to wrap up, as I mentioned, next steps. We'll take all the feedback that we've received. The benefit of this platform is it does record all the comments, so we'll share those with the applicant. And as I mentioned, they're required to prepare a public information meeting summary. So we'll get that summary prepared with the feedback that we've received through the online forms and through the email correspondence. We'll then work with the applicant to prepare the project to present to the advisory design panel. And from that, further revisions potentially before we prepare bylaws for first and second reading to the Land Use Planning Committee. And as I mentioned, this is really the start of the conversation with the public. There'd be a statutory public hearing where you'll have an opportunity to present your comments direct to council. And if it proceeds from there, there'd be third reading with development prerequisites, legal conditions, conditions for the posting of securities. There may be conditions related to compensation for trees, including replacement trees. And then if it proceeds further, it would be final reading before then pursuing applications for building permit. So with that, please, if there are additional comments, send them to me directly by email. And I would just want to thank everyone for their time. Refer to or defer to the project team if there are any sort of closing comments or remarks that anyone wishes to say.
I too would like to thank the public for attending and for giving us all your comments. We will look forward to responding to each one in our response to council.
Great. Well, thanks again, everyone, for your time. Appreciate it.